She told me to leave the dinner table, and the strange part is, it wasn't the first time she had embarrassed me, but it was the first time she did it with that look in her eyes, the kind of look that doesn't just ask you to leave a room, it erases you from it. We were sitting with her parents, her sister and her husband, the table full of food she insisted I help pay for, laughter floating around like I wasn't even there. And then she turned to me, calm, cold, almost smiling, and said, "Why don't you just go upstairs? You're ruining the mood." No one defended me. No one even blinked. Her father looked down at his plate. Her sister smirked. I felt every second stretch longer than it should. I could have argued. I could have asked what I had done. But I didn't. I stood up quietly, pushed my chair in, and walked upstairs without saying a word. That silence would become the most powerful thing I ever used. Because what she didn't know was that I had already been noticing the changes. The late-night texts she hid. The way she guarded her phone like it held state secrets. The sudden gym membership. The new perfume she never wore for me. The way she would stare at me like I was temporary. That dinner wasn't the beginning of the end. It was confirmation. Upstairs, sitting on the edge of our bed. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I replayed the last 6 months in my head like a detective reviewing evidence. 6 years of marriage reduced to patterns I had ignored. We used to laugh together. We used to build plans. We used to talk about children. Somewhere between promotions and pressure, between her new job and new friends, I became background noise. I pulled out my phone and opened the shared cloud account. She forgot we shared it. Pictures don't lie. There were screenshots, conversations, a name that appeared too often. Daniel. At first it was casual. Then it wasn't. Inside jokes, compliments, late-night confessions. I feel alone even when he's home. That one line didn't hurt the way I expected. Clarified everything. I wasn't losing her. I had already lost her months ago. The next morning, she woke up expecting tension, expecting confrontation, expecting me to beg or explode. Instead, I made coffee like always. I asked if she wanted sugar. She looked confused. Silence makes people uncomfortable when they're waiting for chaos. She studied my face like she was trying to read a language she no longer understood. "About last night," she started. I cut her off gently. "It's fine. You were right. I shouldn't have stayed." The words landed differently than she expected. She didn't know that while she slept, I had transferred my half of our savings into a separate account. Perfectly legal, perfectly calm. I had called a lawyer before breakfast. I had scheduled a consultation during my lunch break. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted control. That day at work, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't vent. I focused. For the first time in months, my mind felt clear. Betrayal is sharp, but clarity is sharper. The lawyer didn't seem surprised. "Do you have proof?" she asked. I nodded. Screenshots, dates, financial records, shared assets. She explained everything in a tone that felt almost comforting. I wasn't the first. I wouldn't be the last. I walked out with a plan instead of pain. At home, she was softer than usual. Too soft. She cooked my favorite meal. She touched my arm when she passed by. Guilt has a smell if you pay attention. "Are we okay?" she asked that night. I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw her as she was, not as who I wanted her to be. "We're calm," I said. Calm scared her more than anger ever could. Over the next 2 weeks, I observed. The phone habits continued. The bathroom texts. The working late excuses. I never checked again. I didn't need more proof. I needed patience. I started going to the gym myself. I updated my wardrobe. I stopped asking where she was going. When you stop chasing someone who expects to be chased, they start looking back. One evening, she accused me of being distant. I almost laughed. "You told me to leave the table," I reminded her. "I'm just giving you space." She had no response. Daniel's name stopped appearing in notifications on the shared account. Not because it ended, because she got smarter. But smarter wasn't enough. I had already printed everything. The real shift happened 3 weeks later when her parents invited us for another dinner. She hesitated before asking if I wanted to go. Of course, I said. I dressed better than usual. I spoke confidently at the table. I laughed with her father. I complimented her mother's cooking. She watched me like she didn't recognize the man sitting beside her. Midway through dinner, her sister made a small joke about me being quiet these days. Before my wife could respond, I did. Silence helps you see clearly, I said with a small smile. The room shifted, subtle but noticeable. When we got home, she confronted me. What's going on with you? I looked at her and realized this was the moment she expected a confession. Instead, I gave her honesty. I stopped fighting for someone who already left. Her face paled. For a second, she looked scared. What are you talking about? I walked to my desk, opened a folder, and placed a single printed screenshot on the table between us. Not all of them, just one. Enough. The color drained from her face. She tried to speak. No sound came out. I didn't yell, I said calmly. I didn't insult you. I didn't embarrass you at dinner. I just noticed. She started crying. I felt nothing. Not hatred. Not satisfaction. Just stillness. It's not what it looks like, she whispered. That sentence is universal. I nodded slowly. It's exactly what it looks like. She reached for my hand. I stepped back. Not aggressively. Just deliberately. I have a meeting tomorrow, I said. With a lawyer. That was the first time fear fully appeared in her eyes. The next morning, everything changed. Not because she begged. Not because she confessed. But because I finally understood that the quietest exit is the strongest one. She didn't sleep that night. I could hear her moving around, pacing, crying softly when she thought I was asleep, typing messages she probably regretted sending, deleting others she feared would be discovered. But I stayed still, staring at the ceiling, realizing that love doesn't usually die in one dramatic moment. It fades in small permissions, in ignored instincts, in compromises that slowly erase self-respect, and by the time someone tells you to leave the dinner table, the relationship has already packed its bags. In the morning, she tried again, softer, fragile, sitting across from me with red eyes and shaking hands, telling me it meant nothing, telling me she was confused, telling me she felt lonely, and I listened without interrupting because sometimes silence forces truth to fill the gaps. And the more she explained, the more it became clear that Daniel was not a mistake but a choice, repeated over weeks, nurtured in secrecy, protected by lies. Do you love him? I asked calmly, and that question broke her more than any accusation could have, because she didn't answer immediately, and in that hesitation I found all the confirmation I needed. I slid the envelope across the table, divorce papers drafted cleanly, respectfully, without cruelty, because revenge is loud but dignity is quiet, and she stared at them like they were written in a foreign language, her hands trembling as she whispered, "You're serious?" And I nodded, not out of anger but out of acceptance, because the moment she chose to publicly dismiss me at that dinner table was the moment she stopped protecting our marriage, and I was simply finishing what she had started. The days that followed were surreal, conversations reduced to logistics, dividing furniture, discussing the house, explaining to families. Without exposing details, and when her parents called asking what happened, I didn't tell them about the messages. I didn't tell them about Daniel. I simply said, we grew apart. And that restraint did more damage to her image than any public humiliation could have, because deep down she knew I was choosing integrity over exposure. She tried one last time a week later, standing in the living room surrounded by half-packed boxes, telling me she would block him, quit her job, move cities, do anything to fix it. But desperation that appears only after consequences arrive is not love. It is fear of loss, and I told her gently, "You didn't fight for us when it mattered." And she broke down completely, sliding to the floor, realizing too late that respect once lost does not return on command. The divorce finalized quietly, almost anticlimactically, and the first night alone in that house felt heavier than I expected. Not because I missed her, but because endings, even necessary ones, carry weight, and I allowed myself to grieve not the woman she became but the future I once imagined with her. Months passed, and something unexpected happened. Peace. Real peace. I slept better. I focused better. I reconnected with friends I had neglected. I traveled. I rebuilt routines that belonged to me alone. Silence stopped being a reaction and became a foundation. Then one afternoon, nearly a year later, I saw her by accident at a cafe downtown, sitting alone, looking smaller somehow, older in a way stress creates, and when our eyes met, she stood up hesitantly, walking toward me with a fragile smile, asking how I had been, and I answered honestly, "I've been good." And I meant it, and she told me things didn't work out with Daniel, that it was never serious, that she realized too late what she lost, and there it was, the full circle moment most people fantasize about, the chance to gloat, to remind her of that dinner, to replay the humiliation. But I didn't, because growth is not proven by how loudly you win, but by how calmly you walk away, and I simply said, "I hope you find what you're looking for." And as I turned to leave, I realized that the most powerful part of my story wasn't the betrayal, wasn't the divorce, wasn't even the evidence I collected. It was the moment I stood up from that dinner table without arguing, because that was the night I chose myself, and the next morning everything changed, not because she apologized, not because karma struck dramatically, but because I stopped begging for a seat at a table where I was no longer respected. And sometimes the strongest revenge is not destruction, it is absence. It is rebuilding so completely that the person who once dismissed you becomes just another chapter in a life that kept moving forward. And if there is a lesson in all of this, it is simple. Never fight to stay where you are tolerated, never argue to prove your worth, and when someone tells you to leave the table, stand up calmly, walk away with dignity, and build your own table somewhere else, because silence, when chosen with strength, is never weakness, it is power.